The Zom 100 live action movie just came out, and it was actually a pretty good adaptation as far as animated live action goes. It takes itself quite a bit more seriously than the anime does, because the anime can afford to be a bit crazier and have the colored blood of the zombies and all that kind of stuff. Although the end of this movie goes pretty wild, so it was an interesting balance. There will be spoilers from here on out if you haven't seen any of the series, and I'll let you know when I'm going to get to spoilers if you've seen the anime. The movie makes some changes that I don't think are a big deal, but I'm also not sure why they made them. The manga and anime, he works for 3 years before the outbreak, and in the live action movie, it's just 1 year. And in the movie, he's also a he's a football player instead of like a club rugby player. And it's like a pretty important part of the plot as far as symbolism and shit goes near the end, which I thought was another odd choice. I think this one does a really good job of capturing just how soul crushing that it can be to go from college to the workforce. You know, you go from having free time and partying to people talking to you like shit just because they've been around longer, and then you don't know if every job will be that way, so you're hesitant to leave, and you don't know if you'll end up better off if you go elsewhere, or if you stick it out now while it's tough. Maybe it'll lead to a lot of money and a really great position down the road. And there's part of you that's like, oh my God, is this adult life? And it's a really big transition. And this is, I hope, a very exaggerated form for most people, you know, where he's working, it looks like 100 hours a week at least, and sleeping at work and never going home. I feel like it captures that part really well, which is obviously one of the main themes of the manga, anime, and movie. Essentially becoming an adult, especially a shitty job, is worse than living in the zombie apocalypse, because at least there you have freedom. So it's appealing. And obviously that's a bit of the dark humor that it captures pretty well along with the anime and manga, where he's cheering zombies everywhere and the world's burning down. So they stuck to the general premise, like I said. One interesting change that I think worked for the movie near the beginning was when Otori, she's the chick who is banging the boss in the beginning, he texts her if she needs help and she answers instead of him kind of stalking her, which I thought was a good choice. And she's also still human when he arrives at her place. And since they turn him into a football player, he's kind of running through the zombies and shit. And, you know, obviously the action's much more grounded. He's not, because, you know, with anime and manga, you can have this really forced perception, and you can do kind of things that mess with distance and get away with it, I think, much more than live action. So Otori had a bite on her arm when he got there, and she actually ended up beating the boss to death instead of him throwing the boss out the back door or the window. And then she turns after that, and he's pretty upset about it. And this movie, he also seemed clueless about it, as opposed to the manga or the anime where, you know, they can hear them banging in the office. So we get some of him screwing around with his list, and his list is a lot shorter than this too. And he does everything on the list during the duration of the movie, pretty much. And when he runs into Shinazuki, she's wearing a motorcycle helmet and hits him with like a little police baton. And it's obviously not as pleasant for him as the way they meet in the manga or anime, where you get all the lewd camera angles and her ass and boobs are out or popping out. So in the movie, she beats a couple zombie asses, and they show that the zombies in this are drawn by sound. So they're pretty much completely blind, is the way the movie portrays them, or almost completely blind at least. So she rips him for helping a stranger and taking risk, which actually doesn't help him until later in the anime, which that's a minor spoiler, but I mean, if you've seen the anime before, you knew she's going to show up again. And in this, when he rescues Kencho, they cut out the roof to the roof jump, where he strips and says he wants to be a comedian and stuff, which I actually thought kind of undermined his character a little bit, because he has to decide, like, is he going to become a zombie or take risk in order to become what he wants. So in this, they run up to the rooftop, and then it just kind of cuts. So from here on, there's going to be spoilers for the anime, if you're an anime only. So they show up in a bar, and this is where he comes up with being a superhero for his list. And he comes up with wanting to go to the aquarium for the steel skin shark suit. So they definitely combined stuff in the anime and manga, which I'm sure is just a matter of runtime. Because even this movie was about 2 hours and 10 minutes, which is decently long for a movie. You know, one season of anime, if you have 12 episodes, you can fit in twice that. So they definitely had to rush some stuff. So they combined where the people want to go to the aquarium and the flight attendants. And he actually runs into Shizuka here during the part with the flight attendants that you probably see in the anime. But a lot of the dialogue's the same. So, all that same stuff happens where Kensho hooks up with the girls, and in this, he ends up talking to Shizuka instead of the girl Reina or whatever. And then we get a montage of the three of them, Shizuka, Kensho, and Akira, becoming buddies, doing yoga on surfboards, paragliding, fireworks, going to a hot spring, just all the shit on his list. And Shizuka is a pretty big bitch during the entire thing with the flight attendants until Akira saves her. And they get into a RV because they're going to the aquarium because it's supposed to be rumored to be a safe place. And when they get in the RV is when she finally opens up a little bit and they do all this montage stuff that I just mentioned. So they have a tire get blown out due to a spike strip just before they get to the aquarium. And this is straight from the manga. Well, sort of. Because in the manga, this is just a compound. And in this, they combined it with the aquarium. At least from what I remember. So, like I said, they have a tire get blown out from a laid down strip tax. And his boss is running the aquarium like a company. And he's running it like the way that he ran the company that Akira worked at before. Obviously, he's petrified. His boss is still a huge douche. And everybody just treats him like shit. Kensho and Shizuka get mad. They don't want to stay there anymore. But Akira is now scared to leave because he doesn't want something to happen to them. And his confidence was pretty much destroyed by his boss. And this guy also has teams making runs into town for supplies and using zombie for security to help people locked out, but it's also to keep them locked in. And obviously, he still has PTSD about that company. He can't stand up to him until Shizuka gives him an earful about doing what he actually wants to do and not living like a zombie. So she adds that to his list. And we get a bunch of flashbacks about their time together and him being happy. So he stands up for himself, and simultaneously, one of the guys making a run let a zombie sneak into the truck when he was out smoking. So he drives that zombie straight into the compound. And then because they're in the compound, once that one zombie gets out and bites the guy, it's obviously chaos. So the zombies get there, and the boss, in typical villain fashion, shoves a couple employees toward the zombies. Akira saves them. And this is where it gets pretty crazy in the movie. And I thought it was fine, but the tone really didn't match the movie the way I think this works in the manga and anime. And I think it's just one of those things where you can get away with crazy shit in anime and manga just because of the style. So this is where the zombie shark shows up. And this is where it gets super over the top because they're fighting a great white who's been eating zombies that fell into the top of his tank, essentially. So then the zombies punch their legs through the shark's stomach, and he becomes like a walking zombie shark. So they fight him, and this is where Akira is helping people get out while the boss is panicking. He's like, I'm not going to let him die because essentially it's just not the right thing to do. And he finds the shark skin suit. So he goes and fights the zombies off so the boss can get safe. And that's all funny because, he's getting bitten, but it's not breaking the skin. So he's like, oh, this still hurts. And then he has to fight the Great White with Kensho, and Shizuka also chooses to help when she's been like, screw these people we don't know the entire time because it's just a risk. And we get this ridiculous ending, which is compounded by the fact that his suit looks like a cheap cosplay of a superhero. She ties together a couple batteries because sharks are sensitive to electricity on their nose. Kensho, who has PTSD from screwing up their championship game, has to pass them to him. Last time, obviously, he didn't and fumbled and they lost. Here, he gets the batteries to him. And Akira jumps down the steps and punches the zombie shark in the face, and that's how it dies. So the whole thing is like crazy absurd, which I think would work better if the movie had gone all out the whole time. Because even when he goes to rescue Kensho, or when he goes to the convenience store, or he saves Shizuka when the flight attendants get turned, a lot of that is done in pretty typical zombie movie fashion. Like, you don't have the scenes of him like riding the motorcycle and doing these huge jumps, and obviously that's all forced perspective in the anime, and there's explosions everywhere. Blood is all colorful, and there's kind of a zany tone to it where it's not totally dark. In the movie, the zombies are gross, so that makes a big difference when you're talking about the tone. So I thought it was fine. It's just one of those things where I think if you're going to do an adaptation, you really have to commit to it, whether it's to go all out and do it as a series, or do it but you're going to put your own spin on it and mute it for a real live action type thing. Because if they didn't do the shark zombie at the end, I think it would have still been like a solid zombie movie, but it goes from like a regular solid zombie movie to like crazy, and there's not really much in between, which I just thought it was a bit of an odd jump. And like I said, the zombies in this are gross. Like they do the thing where when they stand up, they're all creaking and like you can hear their neck cracking and they like got the black blood coming out of their mouth. And the makeup looks good, so they look disgusting. But it makes the zombies a lot more human than what you get in the anime, where it's a stylistic choice, I'm sure, to not have blood all over the screen and keep the tone just a bit lighter with yellow and blue and green blood and the one woman who got turned after she had eaten too much curry and was farting and stuff. So they cut out some of the stuff that made it goofy, like the Kensho getting naked and all that, and they kind of toned him down. And they just made it more of a regular movie all the way up until the last half hour, which I thought was just kind of an odd choice. But overall, as far as adaptations go, it's fine. I mean, there's been some good ones, even though people don't like live action for anime. I mean, obviously, you have like shit like Attack on Titan, which is horrific. But then you have stuff like, I think Erased is a solid one. Alice in Borderland was a good live adaptation, or at least I enjoyed the show. I haven't read the manga yet. Sweet Home was good, but I still haven't read the webtoon yet. I think they can be done right. I think you just have to commit. Or commit to saying, look, there's a style that anime can get away with that live action just can't. And live action, you're trying to appeal, I would imagine, to a broader audience, to a different audience. I think it would have been smarter for them to tone down some of the goofier stuff in this, which they did, all the way until the last third. Overall, if you like the show, you'll probably at least enjoy the movie once. It's not going to change your life or anything, but it's fine. It's definitely not like an insult to the show or anything, I don't think. Like Death Note. I'm going to leave this one here. And go check it out if you're not doing much. It's the weekend. All right, thanks. See ya.